Hello and welcome to this new episode of Bootstrapping Your Dreams Show. I'm your host Manuj Aggarwal, and today we'll be talking with Lieutenant Colonel Jennifer J.J. Snow, who is the Chief Technology Officer at the United States Air Force AFWERX. AFWERX is a United States Air Force program with the goal of fostering a culture of innovation within the service. It is intended to engage inter and extra service innovators and entrepreneurs in the operations of the United States Air Force. Jennifer serves as the government representative for technology outreach and engagement on behalf of the command and 756 interagency action officers spanning 40 different government agencies. Snow has over 23 years of experience of successful federal civilian and military leadership and management experience, and she's a top innovative and focused individual recognized for the ability to consistently overcome obstacles in the defense and intelligence community. Jennifer's background is in I can't pronounce that. Sorry.
Counterproliferation, yes.
Yeah, and the counterterrorism operations, which includes tours and deployments with Air Force Special Operations Command Special Tactics, Joint Special Operation Command, the 17th Training Wing, National Security Agency, which is known as NSA generally, Junior Officer Cryptologic Career Program, 70th Intelligence Surveillance and Reconnaissance. This is another one I can't pronounce. Wing, a United States Special Operations Command, and most recently AFWERX. JJ's work has been presented to the members of the National Security Council and the White House and key senior leaders across the Department of Defense, intelligence community, and interagency to inform and highlight emergent risks and opportunities involving technology and technology-influenced environments. In her current role at AFWERX, JJ serves as the military representative for technology outreach and engagement, bridging the gap between government and various technology communities to improve collaboration and communications, foster a culture of innovation, identify smart solutions to wicked problems, and guide the development of future technologies to benefit the U.S. Air Force, Department of Defense, interagency, and allied partners. She's also an expert she's an expert networker and team builder, ready to tackle the toughest problems by leveraging non-traditional, unconventional solutions and collaborating with world-class innovators who are driven to make a positive difference. JJ truly believes that anyone can be an innovator, no matter their age or background. According to her, the best innovation stories exude passion, vision, and cross-cutting impact. I'm so excited to talk to you, Jennifer.
Manoj, thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here, and it's great to see you again. And I'm just super, super excited to contribute to your show and what you've been building.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So first of all, I always like to get to know the guests. So can you tell us about your journey? You started off as a science fiction writer. You're doing so many things, and now you are you're pushing the boundaries of technology for United States Air Force and innovating all these amazing things. So please help us get to know you better.
Sure. So I actually started off with Fish and Wildlife Service as a wildland firefighter and a park ranger for 5 years. And my love of technology came through there. I was using radio telemetry to track endangered squirrel populations on the Delmarva Peninsula. We were tracking sturgeons up and down the Chesapeake Bay to study their migration. So a lot of the technologies that I started to play around with started in Fish and Wildlife Service. And then I joined the Air Force. They were a part of the plan to pay for a master's degree and actually go back to the FBI, which is a completely different story. But doing that, I decided that, hey, I really love this and I want to stay on board as an intelligence officer where I'm looking at different types of technologies. What are the risks that they pose? What are some of the opportunities that they bring? And then how do we bring that together, on behalf of national security? And then that led to my current job, which I've been doing for the last 6 years as an innovation officer. Every job, I'll tell you, has been great. By far, this is my favorite line of work. I get to work with all kinds of amazing people. I learn something new every single day, and it's just been fantastic. I'm so pleased with my experience in the Air Force and all of the wonderful opportunities I've had.
Yeah, that's amazing. No, I follow you on LinkedIn, and you're publishing new content every day, and some of the innovations that like I think I'm pretty up to speed on what is happening around the world, but the thing that you post is like mind-blowing stuff. So I don't know where you get the information from. Obviously you have better sources than most. So let's talk about innovation within the government. Like obviously Air Force and US Army are they are known for really adopting high technology, like really advanced technology for protecting the entire world, basically. But from what I know and understand, the general perception is they don't move as fast. They take their time and they evaluate the technology, and they make sure that everything is good before they actually include it in their repertoire. So tell us how your role is different, because I know you work at a different pace than the rest of the Air Force. So can you shed a little bit of light on that?
Yeah, definitely. And that's a great question, because part of the challenge, and this was under former Secretary of Defense Ash Carter, is the fact that our acquisition cycles were moving slowly, and he really wanted to foster an environment that enabled agile acquisition, so that when we had military personnel coming in with a need, we could respond much faster. From that was born the Worx Models, DIUX, Naval X, and several other innovation hubs. These are fantastic. So when they first came out, I was skeptical, because everybody knows how slow the government moves in acquisition. There's a lot of policy behind that, and regulation behind that we're looking at. How can we tweak this? How can we change it? What do we need to keep, and what do we need to improve upon or dispose of and make better, like break it to make it better? The Worx models really were one of the foundational models to help do that. It's a public space. It's a digital and physical space where all kinds of bright minds can come together, government and private sector, academia, hackers and makers, and come around these really wicked problems and bring in unique technologies in ways that we never imagined. Nice. How to solve those problems together, and then bring that forward in a way that it benefits the individual innovator and the small business, but it's also benefiting the government and helping us to move faster. And so what you saw was a number of different interesting acquisition mechanisms that came into play that then allowed us to move much faster. For example, we have the SIBRs and the SITRs that are brought into play here, that small business innovation research and the science tech transfer research that are brought into play with the Air Force. This allows us to bring in a small company and see if the tech that they have is of interest to an Air Force partner. If it is, they've got $50,000 to start, and they can talk to all of our liaisons. If it is, that partner does a letter of interest, and then that moves them on to a phase 2. If the partner's a major command, they can choose to match funding with AFWERX, so they can put funding in and we'll match that. And sometimes we'll have a private sector partner that comes in that has an interest in that area too. They will also do matching. And so you've got a number of exciting options there. In-house, we use Spark, which is for our airmen to come forward with bright ideas. When they encounter a challenge in the field, they can bring that forward and say, look, this is a problem, and it touches all of these areas in the Air Force, and others can upvote that and say, yes, this is a problem for us too. We'll partner them with the right technology and the right experts to develop that out, rapidly iterate with them in the room, and then they tell us, this is perfect, we need to tweak it like this, make this change, and then we're able to roll it out very quickly. A lot of that is done open source. In many cases, we'll team up with one or more small companies, and that can move very, very quickly. Under a year, sometimes under 6 months, sometimes under 3 months if it's something smaller and we're able to get that going quick. For a lot of our SBIR grants and our STTRs, you're able to put in for those, and I think we had close to 4,000 this last time. Our team will review those and then go ahead and send a letter out, and we try to turn those in about 45 days.
Wow.
Heard of. Before, it would take you 18 to 36 months. And the larger contracts will still take that time period, but now we're also establishing really unique transition mechanisms. So for the first time, instead of waiting, and okay, we've got our first 50K, and now we've got our second round of funding and a customer that's working with us, and now we've got our third round, oh gosh, we don't have a contract yet. What happens? Figuring out those smart paths. So one of them, we're teaming up with the Naval Postgraduate School because they have all of the services there and a bunch of our interagency partners. And in this, we're leveraging off of the joint interagency tech bridge that they have, bringing everybody together and allowing our students that are there for 18, 24 months, sometimes 36 months, to come in with a problem that they've had on their last assignment. They can work as a team or individually and say, I've got this challenge, and then reach out to the right companies or reach out to AFWERX and say, look, I need help on this. That becomes their thesis or capstone. 18 months or 36 months, when they graduate, they've now worked with that company to evolve a solution that also counted as their capstone or thesis work. And that gives a clear transition pathway because many of them go on to their next command. And they bring that technology with them and deploy it into the field for the first time.
That's amazing. That's amazing. That's wow. I mean, you mentioned the word agile, and my background is technology. I've worked in Silicon Valley startups for the longest time, and it sounds very similar, what you're doing. And when you mentioned agile, I was like, okay, a lot of people do mention agile, but when you started describing it, it actually sounds exactly like how these tech giants work. So that's amazing. And so that also brings about another problem, because now things are opening up and you're evaluating all these technologies. 4,000 is not an easy thing to evaluate all these things. So, from what I understand, you have a small team. It's not a big team. So how do you prioritize evaluating all these proposals or technologies or solutions that you're working on?
So this last time, what we decided to do was open it up so our interagency partners who are looking for some of the same solutions were there to help us vet it. What we did was we broke it down so we can have one person review as few as 12 technologies, rank them, and then push it back to the overall group. And we can do it by segment, so specific focus area, or we can do it by an interagency focus area, and then they can match it against what the Air Force is doing. In this case, we have all of these interagency partners, sister service partners, and the Air Force, the AFWERX team. They're actually evaluating this with help. What that does is it creates this really cool collaborative environment where other people, other teams that may also need the same technology can now look at it. They don't have to duplicate the effort of reaching out to say, hey, we've got all of these needs. They can see what we have, and if it works for them, then we can team up on that.
Nice.
We save time, and everybody gets a win.
That's amazing. And so then comes I'm sorry, I'm going to ask these questions because as an engineer, I my mind sort of goes to the next step. So it must create a whole bunch of information, raw information about what is being worked on, and then how do you make sure that information gets disseminated and it's organized in a way that is digestible, and I can say, okay, yeah, this one looks good for me, this one doesn't look good for me. Like how does that happen? Because I mean that's a big challenge itself.
Yes, so there are several different databases that we're working with. One of the longest running, and I would say the legacy database, is a database called Vulcan. This is a joint database that actually creates a tech bazaar, if you will, where companies can come online and set up their own free tech card. And in the base, they can put all of their information, their contact information, they can do an overview, they can share a white paper or a slide deck. And then at the same time, government customers can come in and view a series of tech. So if, for example, say I was traveling to San Francisco and I wanted to look at all of the artificial intelligence companies that were in that specific area because I want to set my trip up around meeting.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
This database allows me to go in, I can click on San Francisco, and then I can sort for artificial intelligence companies, and it will pull up everybody that has filed a card in that database, and it's the companies to do this. And then I can click on it and I see their point of contact, I see where they're located, and I can set up my time around the city to meet with all of them and go around and tell them, hey, this is what I'm looking for specifically, and come back home with a fantastic list of capabilities. What we started doing before the pandemic, and we started doing this virtually after the pandemic, was we actually have a joint technology scouting team. So the Army was involved, the Navy was involved, Department of Homeland Security got involved, The Air Force, of course, was involved. The Special Operations was involved. So we had all of these different team members coming in, bringing their requirements. And we'd sit in a room and we'd say to people, hey, we're coming out to San Francisco, or, we're coming to Austin. They would meet with us and we would each go around the room and say who we were and the organization that we represented and what some of the funding opportunities were. They got 10 minutes to run us through a pitch and then 10 minutes to answer any questions. And if we were interested, we'd exchange cards and then we'd follow up with them. Now we've switched everything digitally. So we tech conferences, joint tech conferences with the folks out in Washington State, the Northwest Defense Conference folks. And then we've done a bunch of meetings. Ridgeline Partners was the last one in New York City, and they set up a bunch of companies for us to look at. It makes it really easy for you to get to know people and understand their technology quickly, the right resources that matter to you. Not all of the tech will meet all of the requirements for the people in the room, but everybody comes away with a win. And after each one of these trips, we do a full report, and that's shared out across the Defense Department, our interagency partners, with all the contact information and a brief summary on each company, so anybody can follow up with them. And we also encourage them to go back into Vulcan, share their data, and then in that space, the government can actually put a call for specific technologies or can actually post an upcoming event. All they have to do is drop their company card in there, their virtual card, and then they're registered, and the service can reach out or the interagency partner can reach out and say, hey, yes, we want to include you in this.
That's great. So it sounds almost like you're removing a lot of barriers to work with the government and inviting pretty much everyone who can sort of contribute.
Very much so. One of the biggest pieces that we wanted to do was find a friendly front door for small businesses and individual innovators to find their way in. A lot of cases, you have large companies and they overshadow the little guys.
Yeah.
Try to create equitable environments. So I know when I was at SoftWorks, one of the conferences or conventions we held was a cybersecurity convention, and we invited, I think, 80 different companies. Everybody got a table and 2 chairs.
Nice.
So it didn't matter if you were one of the very big companies, a company just getting started. And the little guys that were coming in thought it was hilarious. They were like, this is great. We're all on equal footing now. The big companies actually like, this is actually cool. We didn't have to bring all of this stuff to set it up. And it was more personal, more engaging, and everybody had a really good time. We got some great feedback. But a lot of the changes we're making, that's coming from the feedback that we've been given over time. And we're trying to listen to our customers on all sides and adapt and improve.
Nice. That's great. I mean, I can tell you, like, even just listening to you is kind of refreshing, because this is not how generally I'm used to hearing from the government or Air Force for that matter. So that's great. Can you tell us a little bit about what are some of your favorite innovations that came out of this?
Oh my gosh, you're gonna make me pick.
No, maybe something.
There's so many.
Yeah, maybe like I don't know what criteria could be. Maybe something that benefits the Army as well as small businesses or civilians.
Yeah. So one that we recently had a discussion with is a company that is doing space-based refueling of satellites. So this is a gas station in space. Super excited about that, because you all have joint satellites up there. And instead of having a satellite degrade because you no longer have propellant in it, this would allow us to fuel up our satellites. We actually think about how could we leverage things like small-scale robotics that could actually do repairs on the satellites to keep them up in the air longer and give them a longer life. And so this was really exciting for us to see. The company actually resupplied the International Space Station with water. They're moving forward very quickly. Another company I just talked to this week, they have a concept into a prototype for reusable launch containers. These would actually launch with a regular rocket going to space, and you could put an experiment on board or test equipment or resupply. And here's where it gets really exciting. They're reusable up to 5 times. You want to put them in outer space and there's a crisis that happens. There's a tsunami that happens someplace. If the military deploys to that location, they can actually reach out and hit their phone and say, I want a resupply cargo crate to land within 50 yards of this location, and they hit it, and 30 minutes later, it comes down to their location.
My goodness, that's
right?
amazing.
Isn't that
That's
cool?
That's
So
amazing.
these are the things that we're seeing, and it's so exciting because people are doing this really innovative, collaborative stuff, and it feels like this year in particular, it's really, really picked up. People are being really thoughtful about interesting combinations of technology and what comes next.
Yeah, for sure. It sounds like people are giving some competition to Elon Musk here.
Yeah, or they're going to leverage off of what he's built and push it forward. So, and that's the other exciting thing. You see all these incredible space platforms moving forward, and then people are figuring out, well, that platform exists when it didn't before, so now I can do X, Y, and Z. And so they're combining new technologies in interesting ways around that. You know, we were talking about additive manufacturing, 3D printing.
Of course.
And so there's a lot of discussion about new materials, lighter materials to reduce the launch loads. Materials that are biodegradable, materials that are, you know, responsive to different stimulus, so sunlight or water. I mean, just really fantastic capabilities that we hadn't thought of before. But people are combining tech in interesting ways, and that's generating these brilliant new ideas.
Yeah. No, I mean, I spent some time in 3D printing and, you know, coming up with new materials, and this was a totally new world for me. And yeah, I mean, just understanding how far we can stretch the technology is mind blowing, because some of the things were not even possible, you know, before that. So
they're talking about, okay, now we can 3D print metamaterials that create self-assembling like microstructures or nanostructures that to heat or sunlight or water, and so they're flat, and then you put them in water and they form this like solid barrier, or they start to float. It's kind of like the movie Batman, where, you know, his cape is flat, and then he hits it with an electric charge, and it turns into that he can fly. That is happening, but with 3D printing now. It's
amazing. So it's you know, we share this passion for space. Like I you know, since I was a kid, I always wanted to be an astronaut, but then I learned I have to learn so much physics, and I dropped that idea. But you also wrote science fiction novels, and you are a great storyteller. And so tell us a little bit about that. How, did you develop that skill over time, and or what got you interested in writing stories and telling stories?
I've always been a reader. Since I was a kid, I love science. I love science fiction, science fact. I loved a good mystery. And so as a reader, it's almost natural that you also become a writer. And so I started off writing short stories, some poetry, and that turned into scientific articles, and then a couple of books, which belongs to a trilogy that I haven't finished in my family. Where's the last book? Because the first book was a cliffhanger that the second book resolved cliffhanger, and there's no third book yet. And they're like, So yeah, I hope to get back to that one day. I don't know if that series will end, but you know, for me, storytelling is all about relating an experience in a meaningful way to others. And the best storytellers that I've met, they're able to convey information in such a way that there's a lesson there, and I'm able to retain that lesson, learn from it, and it becomes part of me, right?
Yeah, of course.
I'm doing a good job as a storyteller, and I'm talking about innovation. When I walk into a room, my first one or two sentences has to get the audience excited. It has to get them engaged, and it has to tell them why they care, especially with the military, because our senior leaders are very busy people. They're men and women who do not have a lot of time, and so you've got to get to the bottom line fast, and that lets them know, hey, is this a meeting I want to sit through, or is there something I can be catching up on, and somebody else is going to follow up on this? It's really important to let them know right up front, here's why you care about this. Telling a compelling story that lets them know this is why this technology is important. Here's how it solves your problem. That's the biggest part. And so I love stories because I feel like it brings us closer together, us to inter lessons. And then it also helps us to share information, but in a meaningful way. If I throw a bunch of facts and figures up on a board, a whiteboard, people are going to be bored. They're yawning. They don't get it. But if I tell them a story that ties that together, now they're going to get excited about it. Now they're going to enjoy it, and they're going to engage with me more, and they're more willing to ask questions or to give feedback.
Absolutely. You know, I learned this lesson the hard way because as I said, being an engineer, I always wanted to just present the facts and say, okay, this is my point of view, and this is the evidence of that. And I for the longest time I was confused, like why people are not convinced. And then I learned, okay, it's about the stories, it's about the emotional impact, it's about why they should care, and I had to learn all that. So that's a great point. So I'm pretty sure it helped you in your career. I mean, you are an expert networker and everything. So can you tell us how this skill of yours helped you in your career?
Sure. So for me, most of the work I'm doing now, innovation is core to everything, and telling a story that gets people involved, makes them part of what's happening, is a big part of what I try to do, especially in and around the different events, because we'll bring in a lot of different people from different walks of life, all ages. Sometimes you have an age of 13 to 84 in the room.
13 to, wow.
And so they'll come in because there's a problem that they want to solve, and they want to understand more about it, and they want to contribute and give back, and they want to have fun in the process, but they want it to be meaningful. And so you have to understand how each of them brings a different type of expertise. And for me, a lot of this ties into mentorship. And as you know, I'm part of the Mentor Project, which is an all volunteer private nonprofit right now around mentoring. This is also, the core, the heart of what you do as a mentor. It's including people and making them feel like they're also part of the story. So when you bring them in and they understand, well, this is the problem, and then you open that aperture and you let them know that, hey, this is a space where anything's possible. Let's brainstorm. Let's throw out all the crazy ideas we possibly can. And then you find out that the ideas you initially thought were crazy were not so crazy after all. And really cool things come out of that. We had a process that we were looking at. How does a special operator that works with a dog jump out at a high altitude? Well, the dog it needs to be on an oxygen mask, the special on an oxygen mask. The dog has to be oxygenated before that without stressing the dog out. We had a very young teenage girl that had actually fit a gun around her neighborhood and measured all of the muzzles on the different.
Oh my goodness.
And she had measurements, and it was wonderful. And then we had an older gentleman that came in and was thinking about, well, we don't want the dog to be stressed out. We want him or her to be comfortable. And it was a super cool conversation. What came out of it was a square kennel-sized bag that has a clear top, and the dog would be put in there as the plane was taking off, and it had oxygen flowing to the dog. And it's got some gloves that you reach into the box. And right before they're getting ready to jump out of the plane, the special operator would reach in and put a little oxygen mask on the dog and unzip the top, lift the dog out, strap the dog to his chest, and jump out the back of the airplane.
Wow.
It worked beautifully. But that wouldn't have happened without all of these diverse perspectives.
Of course. That's an amazing story. Yeah, that's hilarious. So now we talked about storytelling, we talked about space, and this is my first opportunity to talk about aliens with somebody in the inside.
Oh, you may hear my aliens. I've got pugs on the floor. That's what that is. I know they've used the pug noises in some of the alien video games recently because they make such odd sounds. So if aliens, it's pugs.
Well, so first of all, what do you think? Obviously, I don't expect you to reveal any secret that you may know, but what do you think? Aliens exist or not? Recently there has been a lot of talk about Oumuamua, which the object that flew by.
Yes. And they were talking about
there's a lot of debate about it's like artificial or natural. What are your views about it?
Yeah, so it's really it's an interesting challenge, right? Because the way it came into our solar system and the way it left was very irregular. Physics didn't quite make sense. So I love the debate that's happening around it. I think it's really important. I hear people that are saying, oh, it's just, an asteroid that was this unusual shape. I hear there's another gentleman that says it's actually a spaceship. I don't know that either of those is correct. It may be someplace in between. I'm leaning more towards that it's an unusually shaped asteroid at this point in time. But I've got to tell you, it would be crazy to not think that there isn't life on other planets and that there aren't other life forms that are higher intelligence. I mean, we're discovering today here on Earth that, you've got, I think they had what was it, cephalopods, cuttlefish that are able to do delayed gratification and experiment you would do with a child with Martian.
Wow. Yeah, wow.
I had no idea. And we're learning all the time. So, my personal opinion there is I think that the universe is vast and we have a lot of exploring to do, and I'm excited to see that happen. And I'd be really surprised if we don't encounter other life out there.
Yeah, I do agree. I mean, just by sheer numbers and the probabilities, it's kind of hard to believe that there's, we are the only ones. But I think it's mind-boggling to think how far the distances are, and then it sort of comes into perspective that even if we send signals at the speed of light, it kind of takes centuries to get there.
Yeah, it's hard to understand the vastness of space, and I've had the opportunity to speak with several astronauts that have gone up into space, and almost all of them have said that the very first sensation they have in looking down at the Earth is this sense of smallness, and then when you look out into the depths of space, you realize exactly how tiny we are in such an infinite area. It's such a cool thought that we still have so much to explore and so much experience. And I'm just excited to see what the next 50 years brings. There's so many great space programs going up. I mean, everything that's been happening with Mars lately and the there, I'm just so excited. The next 50 years are going to be amazing.
Yeah, exactly. I think maybe 5 years, because James Webb Telescope is being, when is it, like next year or next year?
I think it's next year. I have to go back and look. I think it's next year. So much getting launched right now. So many cool things happening. And it's not just NASA or the European Space Agency, but you now see all of these private entrants that are coming in and doing amazing things. I mean, Musk, Jeff Bezos, and then these other small companies that are popping up all over and really surprising me and saying, hey, we're doing this, we're doing that. I talked to a company a few months back. They actually are launching low Earth orbit satellites out of the back of a pickup truck. Now, they're in a few weeks because they're very low in orbit, but you can use them for monitoring of like different areas for agricultural crops. You could use them for low-level communications during a disaster. So it's that kind of mindset that's helping us to really probe our planet, but that will also be useful in other planets. Like the first helicopter, the drone that's on Mars. I can't wait to see that thing fly and see what and that's so cool. And think of all the area we can cover now because we have a flight capable copter that's on our planet.
Exactly. Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. And I think the day we do discover there's life out there, I think it'll change us as a species itself in some way.
I do too.
Because we are sort of an arrogant species at the end of the day. But a lot of change has already happened in 2020. Things shifted radically within a few weeks. So you have a very unique vantage point. Like you're working with the private sector, you're working with the government at the highest level. So what, in your view, is going to sort of will be the long-term impact of what we are going through? Economically, health, public health wise, and also from the perspective of like adoption of science and how it's going to impact how we educate our children, because I think a lot of things are going to change, in my opinion. I just want to hear what you think.
Yeah, so this has been such an interesting last year, and I say that from the perspective of encompassing the idea that it was an extremely tragic year from the pandemic perspective, but it was an extremely triumphant year from the perspective of people finding their humanity, coming together, even though we were remote, to make a positive difference for others. And so many incredible advances this year in various technology areas, ones that I didn't expect and some that really surprised me, because people have been unencumbered by a lot of other distractions. We've kind of been put in this timeout zone that's really helped us to focus and create and be creative, but also as we're working remotely, I feel like, at least in my experience this last year, my network has grown tremendously. I'm talking to people around the world with amazing ideas. We're teaming up on different problems. They've got some great tech to share that we're bringing here to the States. And the impacts that I'm seeing are, instead of just developing a technology for a country, it's a technology for a region. It's a technology for the world. And people are focused more on social good and the impact that can come from uplifting and elevating so many others, empowering so many others. So I don't think we're going to be going back to business as usual. I see a lot of companies that I've spoken to that are going to go to a hybrid structure. Best a lot of office space, and you see companies like WeWork that are going to really flexible housing and office models where you now have like a swipe card, right? And you go, you swipe your card, and it's like going to the gym, and you're able to go, and as you travel, you have a place to stay no matter where you are. A lot of companies find that attractive and appealing because their teams are able to work from home. It's saving time, and in many cases, people are happier. And if they get to go into the office a couple times a week, they've got that flexibility where they can see people, and then they can still do stuff around the house when it's convenient for them. And so it's a really interesting combination. I know for me, I've been really, really productive. And then at the same time, I also miss that face-to-face interaction. And it's really important when you're establishing those new relationships. So I think it will be a hybrid model. I don't think we're going to go 100% remote because humans like to be around other humans.
Yeah, of course.
So I think that's an interesting development that will help us globally as far as climate goes, because it's going to cut down on traffic and traffic.
Of course.
But it also may result in how we restructure the way cities are designed and the way we use buildings in the future. I think we're going to see some interesting changes there, and especially around green tech. So I think that there are some really exciting changes coming for healthcare too. We were talking about telehealth for years. It took a pandemic to actually get us there to where people are using telehealth and finding it more pleasant than waiting for a couple hours in a waiting room. They can be at home getting stuff done. If their child is sick, they now are looking at, a thermometer or a biometric device that can actually scan your child and give biofeedback to the doctor. And if it's a fever, if it's a toothache, if it's an earache, there are a lot of different things that are being examined right now as far as how can we make this beneficial in a remote fashion, and they're doing it. And then how can we make this accessible? The accessibility part really excites me because there's a large portion of the globe that does not have access to healthcare. So we're able to do this in a meaningful way, and we're able to provide that in a format that works across a variety of infrastructures, robust to austere. Now we've got something. Now we can help people even when they're remote and get them the basics that they need. That's exciting to me.
That's very exciting. So for sure. And I think, as you said, this event, this pandemic has pushed the innovation forward and sort of decimated some of the beliefs and objections that people used to have. Because I remember I spent a lot of time in healthcare and building systems for governments, and a lot of concerns were around privacy and security, but they were not real concerns. They were just like objections for the sake of objections, and they were like, nobody actually cared within 2 weeks because of the pandemic, because those were just like ignored, and so it really opened my eyes about how our belief systems can sometimes sort of come in the way of innovation.
Change is difficult, right? It's something that's constant, and it's one of the constants that we have throughout life, but it's not comfortable. It's easy to get comfortable with the way things always are, and sometimes it takes a really dramatic push to move us in a direction. And I think for better or for worse, the pandemic has done that. I'm leaning towards for better, because
of course.
Together in a way that I haven't before, and I'm seeing really positive technologies come out of this that are game changers, and not just for one nation or a few, but for everybody. So I'm very excited about this.
Awesome. Great. Well, thank you so much for being with us. This has been a very interesting conversation. I learned a lot, and getting sort of that clear view of where the U.S. Air Force and the government is going. It's just amazing to learn that. And thank you so much for being open and sharing all these amazing ideas and things that you're working on. Now, before I let you go,
much for hoping. Thank you so much for me. This is fantastic.
For sure. Can you, before I let you go, can you tell us how people can reach out to you and connect with you if they want to?
Yes, the best way to find me is to go to JJ Snow at LinkedIn. And if you find me there, just go ahead and click and drop me a message and say, hey, I heard you on Manoj's podcast, or just tell me, hey, I'm interested in AFWERX, and I'll go ahead and connect with you and see how we can help.
Awesome. Great. Thank you so much. I'll put that link in the show notes so that people can reach out.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you again. And it's so good to see you.
Same here. Thank you so much.